all of you. Oh, I didn't realize that both of you are matching.
Oh, we are.
Black.
We've got perfect inverse colors for this morning.
All right, Ali, I want to start with you. Tell us a bit more about AirCall, about how it works. I know that it's basically a system that groups all calls and text messages of a corporate team, so making it extremely great for collaboration, great for remote work. But tell us a bit more.
All right, so in short, AirCall is a contact center software. If I make it simple, we all use a phone, right? We all make phone calls, we have conversations, and 10 years ago we felt that experience sucks. Like, it's very basic. So we try to reinvent this experience, bringing a lot more data, a lot more interaction, and synchronizing all conversations with all the data you have. So your CRM, your ticketing system, making sure you don't have to take notes when you speak to someone, because AirCall will do that for you, will transcribe and load the notes. So we typically use by support teams, sales teams, over the phone, and we have about 20,000 customers very active in the US. US is the biggest market, Europe, and Asia.
What is your competitive advantage? Really the characteristics that differentiate AirCall from the rest?
The product works really well.
Yes,
we used it all in the early days.
Yeah, exactly. You were a customer for many of your companies. The main thing are the integrations. I think what we nailed, what we felt as really the anchor is integrating with other softwares. And that's a big thing in SaaS. Like, we all use a variety of SaaS. There's many SaaS, from Gmail and documents and Slack and this kind of things. AirCall connects seamlessly to that. So you can make sure that, okay, Adrian, I'm going to call you, and then AirCall will pull all the data I have about you. And so I will pull your LinkedIn, I will put whatever you purchase, and so I can have a richer conversation. This is really where we're better than anybody else.
All right. And Michelle, I want to hear about you. So you have started 6 companies before the age of 35. So Clearco has invested more than $5 billion US into 10,000 companies, making them the biggest e-commerce investor in the world. I mean, Clearco, So you've also worked in driving new digital solutions to many of the world's leading brands, such as P&G, Netflix, Starbucks, and even Cirque du Soleil. What? Tell us a bit more about it and how what you do really relates to the SaaS industry.
Yeah, so I've been able to, first of all, I've been a founder forever. I've had every single war wound. I've done every single iteration. I've probably launched half a dozen SaaS products. 4 or 5 of those have failed. So I've seen that. And then I've been an investor through Clearco. And then I've been on the Canadian version of Dragon's Den for 10 years. And so, there's been so much SaaS investing that I have done. I've seen this landscape change so much. And there's now this very interesting intersection between how do we build a SaaS company and how do we add AI to it, so that every time you're selling your product, you're making your customer's life that much easier. And that was truly just automation before, and now that's really being transformed.
Excellent. So, Oliver, you told me back in backstage that you really wanted to discuss the importance of getting your business to the US market. So why is it so important to get your business from Europe to the US in order to boost your business? And what are some of the challenges of getting there?
When you talk about SaaS, SaaS is really global by nature. Right? Even us, like, we provide telephony, right? So yes, we provide phone numbers in Spain, France, US, Singapore, but still, so it's kind of local, but we still operate everywhere. And since the beginning, we had this vision that AirCall, to make AirCall the biggest company possible, the most successful company possible, we have to be global. And to be global, we have to win in the US. Like, the US SaaS market is like, 10x bigger than the European market. It's just, SaaS is used in the all depths of the US economy. So you have to win there, and the customers are more demanding. And so fact is, when we created the company, first we created a Delaware company because we felt this will end up in the US and potentially in the NYSE or in the NASDAQ. And second, I moved to New York very quickly. As soon as you have enough money, then you should move there. And we learned a ton. And actually, we realized the customers, like the European customers who liked our product, We were like, hey, we have a cool product. You come to the US, you're like, we have a shitty product. And so it raised the bar. It forced us having a much better product and much better sales go-to-market engine. You see what I mean? So I think if you win, it's a bit like if you can make it in New York, you can make it anywhere, right? But it's
So
a bit this.
true.
If you win in the US, you're going to win in Europe, you're going to win in Asia, because it's the toughest market, the biggest market. So it's something, my advice, as I'm advising now, new SaaS entrepreneurs, if you can do it, if you've raised enough money, just go there, because you're going to multiply your chances of success and of building something really big.
And this is true as Europeans, but it's also true as Canadians, right? The mistake we always make is we launch to a Canadian audience. Canada is 30 million people, the US is 300 million people. And when we started Clearco, we didn't make the mistake. We said, look, if we do this well in Canada, someone will instantly copy us in the US. And it forces you to raise that bar, to be more innovative. And I think it was probably one of the reasons behind our successes. We were like, we just have to make it in the US, and then we can start expanding internationally.
All right, and so you're living right now in Denver, and Ollie, you went to New York. So we often think that you need to go to Silicon Valley to make your way to success. So is New York the way to go? Did you have to go to other places before going to Denver? How did that ended up happening?
I think you just have to be very mobile as an entrepreneur. I lived in so many different places. I've lived in Toronto, I've lived in San Francisco, I've spent tons of time in New York. I got on airplanes all of the time to figure out how to make it work. And that's just the reality, is when you go visit your customer and then you go visit people around you, and everyone is so mobile now, it makes it very, very easy.
In our case, as a European startup at the beginning, so we had our tech in Europe. New York, like the East Coast, made a lot of sense. And we started off in San Francisco, and it was just too hard. And my concern was like, we're going to create two different cultures, because we just have 9 hours difference, and so we were talking every day at 9 a.m. and at midnight. I was like, okay, are we going to do that for the next 5 years? It's a bit complicated. New York makes it easier. Now, New York has become complicated, I would say, extremely expensive. Sure. But the East Coast, at least, it's a good pattern for European companies. Like, you have a base in Europe and you have a US base on the East Coast. Or if you want to go to San Francisco, then most of the companies I know, they just take the whole company there. And then you become a Silicon Valley-based company, and maybe you have a small office in Europe. Right. But you see what I mean? So it was a natural choice for us.
So in terms of migrating in there, the U.S. is just so complicated in the visa stuff and the immigration stuff. So how do you move there? Do you move with the team or part of your team, or do you move there alone? And how do you make it there? Is it something that you have to invest in to actually be able to live there for some years?
Go ahead.
Okay, so if I can start. The key thing is one of the founders has to move, ideally the CEO. So it was very clear to me that I had to move. And actually, I was in Madrid at the time. My co-founders were in Paris. And we had just raised the Series A, so we had like 10 million in the bank. And it was clear that it was my duty to move there. Now, I moved alone, and I made all the possible mistakes. So everybody warned me. Everybody told me, be careful, the cultural gap. Like, US candidates, they know how to sell themselves. Yeah. Don't be fooled. Be cautious. And I was like, yeah, I'll be cautious. And then I found a guy, and I was like, this guy is perfect. Hired this person. And after 6 months, I was like, okay, out.
Not the right hire.
I lost 8 months. But because I was there, I could see very quickly that it was not working. That this person hired the first 10 employees, and they were all not very good. And so if I had not been here in New York, I would not have seen that. I would probably have waited a year and a half to really be sure. Here, I could sense it. So I moved faster. So very important to send a founder.
Okay, I want to go back later as to how you ended up in Madrid and why. But I want to jump to Michelle, because I think something here is very interesting, is that among the 10,000 companies that you invest on and that you support, many of them are women-led or female-led.
Yeah.
So what motivated you to do so, and more or less what percentage of those are you supporting that are female-led?
So what we did, so I had a very interesting experience. I joined the Dragon's Den show 10 years ago, and what I noticed very quickly on the show is that all the pitches started to sound the same in terms of what people were raising capital for. So people were coming on the show, they had a great new product that they were selling on the internet, and they said, look, I'm here to give up 10% of my company for my first $100,000, right? So early stage e-commerce companies. And you would say, well, what do you need the money for? And they say, well, I need money for ads, and I need money for inventory. And I remember the 20th pitch that heard like this. I'm like, wait a second, why are founders using the most expensive capital in the world to do something that's really repeatable and scalable and could be very succinct to underwrite? So on the show, I remember saying, look, I'm going to throw out a different deal type. Instead of taking 10% of your business that I will own forever for that first $100,000 you're raising, why don't you give me 10% of your revenue just so you pay me back in the capital plus 10%? The founders are like, oh, that sounds like a loan. And I was like, no, a loan would have a personal guarantee and a business guarantee. So I'd either take your business and your house. Very, very punitive if you lose. Founder's like, well, this sounds pretty good. What's the catch? And I said, well, look, you need to plug me into all of your data sources. I need to see your Facebook data and all your ad conversion data and your Shopify data. And the founders are like, okay, I think we can do that. And that was really the first deal. And so when we, and I genuinely didn't ever imagine that ClearCo would get to the size and scale it has. But that was our model the whole time. We weren't looking at pitch decks. We weren't meeting founders. We weren't figuring out who your, school buddies were for some rich private school. We were just looking at the data on how your business was performing. And the magical part about that is 3 years into the business, we were like, I wonder who our founders are. So we looked back, and 50% of them were women.
Wow.
50% were women.
This compares to women in the US getting 2% of venture capital. So it's literally 25 times the average. And it's remarkable what happens when you can use data. And I think we litter the narrative so much with negative AI stories. I think there is an equal, if not greater amount of positive AI stories where you can do things like this, where you're saying, okay, how do you take the bias out of investing when you look at data? And when you do that, a lot of magical things happen. And it was on every vector. It wasn't just gender. I mean, a quarter of our founders hadn't gone to post-secondary education. A third of our founders were visible minorities in the US. Like there was just so much diversity within this group. And we heard it from people. We had ex-military veterans who's like, no one would bet on me, but you guys did. And we were able to create, something really magical here.
Excellent. Now, let's talk a bit about the challenges you both faced when launching your businesses and in or around the spectrum of the SaaS industry as well. If you have to name 3 simple but key challenges that you faced, which would they be?
Oh, start us off.
Start again. I think ultimately, when I look back at the past 10 years, the key driver of our success or challenges is essentially people-related, culture-related, essentially. So having the right people, I know it sounds like very basic or bullshit, but it's so important and you never spend enough time. Like, you can imagine you're starting a company, you're gonna grow fast. So we're growing like typically tripling for a couple of years, then doubling in revenue, right? So that means every year the company is different. Every year you need to hire a ton of people, and the skill set is different. So you need to have a fantastic set of founders. In my case, my first co-founder wasn't the right person, so he quit. Stupidly, we failed to enter into Y Combinator. It's not a big deal. At the time, it was hard to get in. It's still hard to get in. Because of that, he quit. Then I found another co-founder, and he quit because we were out of money. So he said, I want a salary. And I was like, man, we just don't have money.
Yeah.
Then finally, in despair, I could raise money. And then he knocked back on the door saying, now that we have money, can I come back? I said, no, you cannot come back. You're a quitter. Like, no way you come back. And then I found my 3 co-founders. And that's how the company started. And then the first 50 employees, super important. They are the backbone of your company.
Totally.
So never lower the bar. The few times where we said, okay, well, we'll hire that person because we really need someone in marketing or in sales, it was a mistake. And we had to part ways with those people. So really, this, and then 50 people, and then at 150 people, it changes again. Because up to 150 people, I could interview everybody.
Of course.
And then at this point, half my week was interviewing. And I was like, man, I mean, like, as a CEO, it's getting too much. So then you start delegating, but as you delegate, it's very important you have the right exec team.
Yeah.
Otherwise, the few times I had the wrong executive below me, the whole teams below that executives would go wrong very quickly. The good thing is you can fix it.
Yeah.
So it's reversible. So I would say the first challenge, I won't want to talk too much, but the first thing is relentless attention to what are my standards, my level of excellence, and you keep that throughout the stages, from funding to IPO. I'll give you more challenges after.
Gosh, there's so many, and it's so dependent on the stage you're at. I think the first fundamental challenge comes with creating product market fit and finding something that people actually want and they want to pay for. And so the mistake that I see almost every entrepreneur make is that they launch a product, they ask all their friends if they want the product, then they get all their friends to buy the product, and then when they launch it to real people, no one wants the product at the price they need to charge. Yeah. And so I think so many founders lie to themselves at that really early stage. And your product doesn't need to be 20% better to really get differentiated. For me to actually change a behavior, the product needs to be 2 or 3 times better, right? Like Uber was 3 times better than a taxi, like in every way. My card was connected, I didn't have to do directions, like there was all of that was so much better. And I think founders sometimes forget that. They're like, oh my God, marginal improvement. This isn't about marginal, this is about
a substantial improvement.
Truly differentiated, substantially different, and then a price that people are willing to pay. Because there's this myth that like, oh, we'll just raise price later. No, you actually lower price later in a lot of ways. And so going out and figuring out if you have that right piece, and look, it's really hard. The reality is you feel like you're taking black eyes every day as a founder when you're doing this, right? Like even with Clearco, the e-commerce product was our 3rd product. We had built out 2 other businesses. One was servicing Uber drivers, one was servicing Airbnb hosts. And like these were massive. I had posted about them hundreds of times. We had thousands of different users. We had deployed millions of dollars of capital. Like shutting down those products when they don't work is really hard. But we would have never gotten to the size and scale that we got to if we wouldn't have done that. And so I think that's really that first challenge. It makes it for a very hard 3 years because you constantly feel like you're failing. And you never fail in black and white. It's never like obvious that like nobody wants that. There's never that clarity. It's really, do enough people want it at this price point? Can I go find them cheap enough, right? The other thing is like, great, you can find one customer for $10,000, but it costs you $25,000 to get them. That also doesn't work. And so that's probably the first early challenge. And then I agree with Olivier, like all of these people things and how you hire and how you maintain executives and how much time you invest in them is massively important as you scale.
As Michel said, I mean, there's a few very good decisions I made, I can remember. It's only a few of them. One of them was very early on, make the customers pay. So when we started, I gathered 100 beta customers.
Yeah.
It was for free.
Everyone wants it for free.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and it was fine. And I was getting a huge amount of feedback, like, you should do video, you should do this, you should do that. But people were not paying for the product. And actually, the day after my CTO quit, I was like, okay, let's get serious. I want paying customers. And I decided to make customers pay. And I lost 60% of the customers. But the 40 customers that stayed suddenly were valuing my product. They were actually using it. They were ready to put their credit card in. And so the feedback became much more qualitative because they were actual users. So that's very important. And the second thing I wanted to add to Michel's point, your product should be at least 2x better. Yeah. But sometimes I hear founders saying, yeah, but okay, I need to be better everywhere. For me, not necessarily.
No, not at all.
If you want to disrupt the market, you can't be as complete as an incumbent. But try to find a pain point and solve it really much, much better than anybody else. And only for that, people will come to you. And then after, with time, you'll complete your feature set. But you need to have one or a few differentiation items. You don't need to be 10x better on all items.
100%. And you think about, the big product innovations that pushed lots of people forward, it was one killer feature, right? It was photo tagging on Facebook, right? Like that was the entire differentiating between that and Flickr in the early days. It was then the news feed. Like there was 1 or 2 things that were highly addictive, product features that people had that were truly 5 times better, and then everything else can be okay. You're 100% right. You cannot build until everything is perfect. That doesn't work, but you got to have one thing that people are like, oh, I'm coming back for that, right?
So, and coming back to that part where you were saying that, oh, your clients wanted the product for free, and then you started to charge for it. So, do you believe that before there always needs to be like this trial period, allowing them a couple months to try them until they really can't live without the product, and they are then forced to buy it when you submit the subscription or stuff like that. Just like ChatGPT is doing now. Before it was completely free, and now ChatGPT 4. Now you have to pay for it. And I know so many people that were like, okay, I'm paying my $20 for this. I don't care because I just simply can't live without this anymore.
So look, there's lots of debate and there's lots of research on how much you should do as free trials versus not. I think you need to have an extremely strong funnel if you go from a freemium model into a paid model, or you need to have that killer feature in that paid model, because free is not product market fit. Everyone will do almost anything for free. There's just, it looks good, it looks like people are coming back, and you don't really see the rubber that meets the road until you have that. I'm a big fan of charging. I mean, look, lots of enterprise SaaS companies make you put in an implementation fee, right? You're $100,000 or $25,000 into putting in a piece of software. I'm going to tell my team to use it. Like at Clearco, we used, it felt like 80 different pieces of SaaS software, and you're constantly going to your team being like, are we using this? Is this useful? And you take the ones much more seriously that you actually pay for up front to get integrated. And so I think if you're going to do freemium and consumer, it could work. You've got to be really careful. My best advice is to charge and to see what people want, put that implementation fee, get your customers to buy in, and then get your product team to work as hard as they can after that customer is there to retain them. Because at the end of the day, if you're looking for SaaS metrics, like the number one metric that is not going to lie to you is your retention rate. That's it. If that's strong, you can build an incredible, strong business forever. If that's weak, it's going to be very, very difficult, and it's endemic of many other issues within the company.
Right. Very short, so that we go to the next question. So, what emerging trends are you looking at the SaaS industry?
Go ahead.
Well,
what's in the future?
Guess what? Guess what? I mean, in our case, AI is going to be a game changer. Ultimately, everybody understands conversational AI is coming. And so the systems like us, like support teams, sales teams, they, in the long term, at some point, they will be mostly replaced by bots and conversational bots or AIs, right? So, and that's a trend that impacts Aircall very specifically, but you can see many trends, right? Many projects that I'm helping entrepreneurs to emerge out of Madrid. Many projects are AI native, and it's a blend of AI and SaaS, so you still need to have the workflow, the SaaSing. Like a pure AI layer on GPT, honestly, the value is limited, but it can really be game changer. And in our case at Aircall, it's interesting because now we're like almost 1,000 people and 150 million, and we need to reinvent ourselves. We've been building this as disrupting the incumbents for 10 years, and now we're thinking we actually have to try to earth our own business. Otherwise, someone else will do it for us. So we're launching now products where we know our customers will consume less seats, but they will consume our AI product instead. So it's really a challenge for many SaaS players to reinvent themselves and be self-disrupt themselves.
Yeah, the other way to look at, if you just zoom out 10,000 feet to look at SaaS businesses, is many of the SaaS businesses for the last 10 years were really a form integrated to a database, integrated into analytics. Like that was really doing that organizationally within a product, within HR, recruiting, sales. That is fundamentally what that is. That is going to completely change into that entire thing having an AI layer. And that analytics is not, we're pulling algorithmically, it's actually how can we do it better? I mean, you think about most organizations, if you could hear every single sales call and be like, this line said in this way is what drives conversion, like you get to teach every single salesperson so much faster than you've ever been able to. And so the future of SaaS is all kind of how we join AI onto it and how do we make that very, very easy for the user as well.
Excellent. Now, I want to go back very briefly to you, Ollie. I want to know why you went from New York to Madrid, if that was the order, and why Madrid, why you stayed here, and why Madrid has helped you also propel your business now.
Okay, so first I came to Madrid 15 years ago because at the time I was out of consulting and I wanted to be in the real world, so I wanted to run steel factories. I found a job.
That's as real as it gets.
Yeah, that was cool. So 2008, I came here, I was running 6 factories. Unfortunately, 2008 was dreadful, like the market was dying, there was 30% unemployment, so my job was really tough. And that was my cure against asset-intensive businesses a little bit. So then I did that for 7 years, kind of saved this company, and then wanted to build my own, right? But I built it out of Madrid, right? And then as we started Aircall, raised money in New York, like the US was an obvious choice, as we discussed, moved there. And then we scaled the company like to close to 1,000 people, and then I felt, okay, I need to start giving back. The company is still active, it's going to grow, maybe get public, but I want to get back to Europe and I want to start helping entrepreneurs. I think I'm mostly an early stage guy. So it was very natural for me to come back to Madrid because that was my city, my kids were born here. And what I've seen in Madrid, I've seen Madrid emerge progressively. Like, like Paris was a bit like, Paris 15 years ago, sorry to say that, or 10 years ago, was a bit like what Madrid is today. It's vibrant, it's coming, but I think Madrid and Spain can become really a next tech hub in Europe. There's a huge amount of talent. We have an engineering team here at Aircall, and they're really, really good. There's funding coming in. There's a lot of events like this one coming in. I think what's lacking, maybe it's the political support a little bit, but it's coming.
Coming.
Right? And I think I can bring my experience, right? And what I love, what I do today, so I started my fund now called The Lab Ventures, and we're launching about 30 startups, and I love helping Spanish entrepreneurs just trying to think big. Think not only Spain or Iberia, no, think big, think the US, and build SaaS businesses. And I think there's a huge opportunity, so that's why I came back here.
All right. And last question for you, Michelle. So, very quickly, an advice for women to launch their business in SaaS.
Look, it's really tough being an entrepreneur, whether you are, a male or a female. I think that this has always been about resilience, kind of, and mindset, no matter on who you are. So I think, first of all, I am from an incredibly lucky generation. I look back to even someone like my grandmother, and, her options, this is 2 generations ago, were to become, a school teacher or a secretary. And so I think it's like incredible the opportunities that I've been afforded to have as an entrepreneur. And then, the only thing I can control is how many pitches I do. So, if I have a higher rejection rate, that's fine. I'm gonna do 100 pitches and instead of 75 pitches. And if you put your mind on that, I think it makes a huge difference.
Okay, well, thank you so much, Michelle and Ali. What wonderful insights that you've shared here. Thank you so much. It was a pleasure.
Thanks for having us.